That's a good question. Find out what is their theme? What do they want to talk about? What are they passionate about? What what is something that is going to be authentic for them?
Welcome to Clicks and Bricks Podcast. We talk about the entrepreneur mindset.
If you get one shot at this, what kind of shot are you going to take?
If we forget who we are, they're going to forget who you are.
And you've got an adversity story that's out of this world.
Everything from that Main Street brick and mortar to that billion-dollar manufacturer.
All right, Genny, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I am wonderful. Thank you for joining us so much. You're the host of Coffee with Genny B?
Coffee. Yeah, Coffee with Genny B.
Coffee with Genny B. What is Coffee with Genny B about?
Coffee with Genny B is about conversations over coffee. Yes, I talk about coffee, and I have interviewed coffee roasters and coffee shop owners, but it's really about connecting over coffee. You know, when somebody says, "Let's go for coffee," it means I want to spend time with you. And so it's having conversations. It's as if I was sitting in a coffee shop across from someone and we're having a conversation, except now we're doing it over, over Zoom or online platform. So
That is so fun. So most people don't know this about me, but one of my very first shows, actually my first cable show ever, was a show called The Edge St. Louis. And I did a segment called The Coffee Crew. And me and a really good friend of mine, Marshall, we would go to coffee shops around St. Louis. And I don't drink coffee, so I would try teas and she would drink coffee, and then we would just review the different coffee shops. So, and that would have been 1995, probably.
Oh, wow.
95, 96. So it goes back a ways when the coffee shops were just starting to really solidify and pop up all over. They were way different then than they are today.
Oh, totally different. And we didn't have as many, and now they're everywhere. And Starbucks, I mean, there's depending on the city you live in. Yeah, I know. Except
okay,
I'm a Starbucks gal.
Okay. Yeah, I don't drink coffee, so it's probably the one bad habit that I never picked up. I've got all the other bad habits, but coffee was never one that I picked up. So I don't have to ever go through not drinking too much coffee. So wonderful. So just any conversation, just open forum, talking about the stuff that two people would connect to over coffee.
Absolutely. It's talking about just everyday life. It's, I've interviewed so many different people from different walks of life. I've, as I say, coffee shop owners and coffee roasters, but I've interviewed, the owner of a nonprofit called Main Street Project. I've interviewed, actually, my latest interview is with Colin Matheson. He's a 4-time Paralympian with Canada in wheelchair athletics. And then I've interviewed just anybody and just anyone that I find interesting or that I'd like to get to know more about. And maybe my listeners might like to connect. And I just want to tell you a story. I had someone on who was talking about conscious parenting and reclamation. And so we had this interview and she was talking about how, she is a parent, and conscious parenting is not like, oh, I have to be a good parent. It's making sure that you are giving to your children, but also making sure that you're giving to yourself. And I remember someone who listened to that episode sent me a message and said that made such a difference to her, that she needed to hear that at that moment because she was struggling. And when I hear those messages, those stories of people, I loved your episode, it made a difference to me, that gives me the reason why I'm doing this and why I should continue doing what I'm doing.
Okay, I love it. There you go.
Yeah.
So I heard one recently, and I don't recall who it was, but it was a lady talking about, staying at her job even though she wanted to start a company. She wanted to start a business. And she didn't yet because she was staying at her job. And the question was, well, why are you staying at your job? She said, well, because I had to be a good, responsible parent and provide for my family. And the recall was, you're actually being a bad parent by doing that, because what you're showing your child is don't fulfill your dreams. Don't go after your dreams in life. to stay at that 9 to 5 job so that you can, make sure there's food on the table and have this quote unquote, white picket fence house. But you're not taking the chance. And what you're teaching your kids then is don't take the chances, which is actually a bad lesson, right? Because they're just going to they're not going to do what we teach them. They're going to do what we do, at least for some period of time, or they're going to rebel and do the exact opposite of what we do, which can be even more fun.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Conscious parenting is it's being a parent's a tough gig, especially for entrepreneurs, right? If you're out working all the time and you have the kids at home, that's a tough game. So
It is. And feeling a sense of guilt that, I feel guilty because I'm doing something that I want to do and I'm not there for my kids. But, you need to get over that sense of guilt because,
they're not feeling guilty.
No,
When they're staying out late, drinking too much and crashing your car, they don't feel any guilt at all.
no, they don't.
Not at all. They're upset that they got caught or they got in trouble, but they're not feeling guilt yet. So
Yeah. But it's interesting. You had asked before we got on, how I got started with this. And it was actually because I've been a lover of coffee for as long as I can remember. In fact, I mentioned Starbucks. I love coffee so much that I worked as a barista for Starbucks for 4 years. And I really enjoyed that. I got to know the behind the scenes, how to make coffee and, how the journey of coffee goes from farm to cup, right?
right.
And then I was turning 60 in 2019. That was before the pandemic. And I wanted to celebrate and do something special. And so the idea popped in my head, why don't I do 60 days of 60 coffees? And so what I did is I mapped out all the coffee shops in the area and I visited a different coffee shop every day. And let me tell you, it was a bit of a struggle because it was towards the end of the year. And so I had to make sure that I was that there were enough coffee shops available at that time. And so I did that and I recorded my journey or whatever on Instagram. So, pictures and, where I was and a little bit about the coffee shop. And then after that finished, it was January 2020. And I thought, I want to do something more with this. I wasn't quite sure what it was. And so I created my Coffee with Genny B, got the URL and, Instagram account and, email and got all set. And I was going to do something with it. And then COVID hit. And then, of course, everything was put on hold.
Right.
And at that time, I didn't think about a podcast. I mean, I've listened to them, but I didn't even think that I would want to do it. And I remember I was shopping at Staples one day. It was, I guess, in the middle of the year. And I was walking by and there was a Blue Yeti mic in a package sitting all by itself on a shelf. And I looked at it. And I started to walk away, and then it's like, no, I went back and I picked up the mic and I bought it and I brought it home and it sat in a box. And then 2021, I started looking at this mic thinking, well, maybe I should do something with it. And then I met up with a coach and we were talking about different things. And she's, oh, I have my own podcast. I'm like, oh, podcast. That sounds really interesting. And so she connected me with the company that she was working with, and then the rest is history.
Oh, wow. And you are currently 50, how many
56.
episodes in?
56 episodes.
And
Yeah.
you do one a week, so it's just over a year.
Yep.
That's amazing. That's a big undertaking. And
Yes.
you're committed to doing how many total episodes?
I'll keep going as long as I have something to say and as long as people are listening.
Wonderful. So there's no end game at this point. You're just going to keep going. One of the things that I love about the modern state of media is that there's really no rules right now. We can do whatever we want to do. I can do a half-hour show. I can do a 45-minute show. I think on yesterday was 4th of July. We released an hour and a half long show.
Oh, wow.
Never done an hour and a half long show before, but we were talking about America and Juneteenth and all that fun stuff. So, let's just go and let's have it. And it doesn't have to fit. Media today doesn't have to fit into a box like it did 3 years ago, I think, right? Just as early as 3 years ago, everything had to be 22 minutes with 8 minutes of commercials and across the board. But today we can freeform do however we want to do it, which I absolutely love.
Absolutely. And it's funny, when I started, I was also of the same impression. I was like, oh, I got to keep it within 30 minutes. And then And then when I started, this is my normal this is a normal voice and the way I talk, and I use my hands and very animated. But my first, I guess, 3 or 4 episodes, I felt that I needed to be more professional, and so I was
Right.
speaking in a more professional voice. And I remember one of the producers of the podcast, she messaged me and she said, that doesn't sound like you. Why are you talking like that? She said, talk the way you talk normally, the way you talk to us.
Right.
Just do it. Just put yourself out there. And I'm like, okay. But it was tough. It was tough to be
Hard.
yourself,
Yeah.
right? It was because you want to. It's not like I'm pretending to be someone else, but I feel that I need to be someone else in order to be, professional and so on. And over
Right.
time, of course, I let go of that. And then when you talk about episodes, being within that 30 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever, I remember I was doing an episode with a coffee roaster out of Lloydminster, Saskatchewan. He was very fascinating, and it was 43 minutes, and that was the longest one that I had done. Except the longest one that I just did was with Colin Matheson, and that is 52 minutes long.
There you go.
And
Doesn't
I
have to
guess
fit in a box.
Um, and it depends on what people want to talk about. And if someone's talking and they want to share their story, I'm not going to say, "Oh, sorry, time's up. You got to cut it off." Because
Right.
that's not authentic and that's not organic. And if they've said everything they want to say, it's like, well, that was really great. Thank you so much. And then we end it. But otherwise, and sometimes when I do my own stuff, I mean, I did an episode a couple of weeks ago. It was 22 minutes because that's all I had to say.
Sometimes
So.
it goes short, right? And when you're dealing with guests, it's kind of hit or miss. You don't know what you're walking into a lot of times. You don't have a
Mhm.
whole lot of hopefully there's some rapport, but you don't have a whole lot of rapport going into it. So kind of sometimes it can be challenging to create that on the fly.
Mhm.
So something interesting you said, like being yourself in front of the camera it's a challenge for
Mhm.
anybody that's going to do that, right? That's going to put themselves in front of a camera, in front of a microphone, and just kind of be themselves. I think it's such a hard time because it's the first time in my life that I had to really look at myself and really really diagnose this, who am I? Do you think that that's the main reason why it's hard for a lot of people, or do you think that varies across the board, like to relax and be yourself on the camera or on the microphone, either one?
Um, well, there's a couple of things. One, people are not comfortable looking at themselves. Some people don't even look at themselves in the mirror. And so now you're looking at yourself at a camera. It's like, oh no, don't take my picture, or I don't want to be on the video. So that's one. I don't record video. Mine is just audio. But sometimes people don't like the sound of their voice. The
Yep.
first time I heard my voice uh, played back to me, it sounded weird, right? Because like, okay, that's my voice, but it doesn't sound like my voice, and it's really kind of not creepy, but
Right.
it was just like, okay. And then the more you do it, the more it's like, oh yes, that's my voice, and you start almost like acting in a sense that you tend to sort of not modify, what's the word I'm looking for, like modulate, or depending on what you're talking about. Because if I'm talking about something really exciting and happy, and I'm like, hey, so I've got something really exciting and happy, and here's my happy excited voice, right?
Right.
Versus you're telling me a serious story, and it's like, oh yes, I understand, so I've got now my empathetic and I'm understanding voice. So it really depends on the situation and what the conversation is, how you are responding to it.
And I would assume that it's harder with voice to display emotion than it is with audio and video.
Yeah,
You,
yes.
you don't have that extra crush of seeing you smile or truly being happy, right? Like we have that with video. You don't have that with just audio. So you really have to embrace that emotion and push it out. You're right. It's hilarious. I hate my voice. Absolutely hate it. And I do 5 shows a week. I do announcing, I do public speaking, all of those things. And all of these I hear, oh, you've got a great voice and all this stuff. So I just trust the world that they tell me I've got a great voice. So I don't like it, but if other people do, let them. I'm not. Who am I to take it away from them? I'll keep putting it out there.
Yeah.
And it's my job, so I kind of have to at this point.
That's your job. It's a
Yeah.
gift. you know, and you know what, and I want to talk about why it's a gift, because not everyone can do this. You know, there are podcasters out there, there are radio personalities, there are TV hosts that they should not be doing that job, because it's the, I don't know if it's the voice, or I don't know whether it doesn't come across as relatable, you know, and
Okay.
I've received comments that my voice is very soothing, very easy to listen to, you know. So when I'm talking and I'm telling a story, it's not this big jarring voice that, you know. And today, you know, do you remember what's his name? Oh shoot, now I'm gonna blank on his name. He had a TV show, Suspenders, interviewer, CNN.
Oh, Larry King.
Yes, yes. Okay, Larry King, you know,
Arcade came in somewhere.
yeah, very successful, a very, very successful and great personality, but he had a kind of a very, almost like a jarring kind of a voice, didn't he, in a sense? But
Unique
that
for sure.
didn't, yeah, but that didn't put people off. In fact, that was as much part of his persona as his suspenders, right?
Yes.
And so when you heard his voice, it's like, oh, I know that voice. That's Larry King, you know. Or you hear, you know, people who have very, very distinctive voice, and you know right away who that is. And that's basically, in a sense, their trademark. And so back to you, Ken, with your voice, and thinking, oh, I don't like my voice, and you know, people seem to think it's great, but that's your trademark. And so when people hear you, it's like, oh yeah, that's Ken Cox, right? And
Yes.
yeah.
But and I'll tell you, my favorite one is I really like. I announce amateur sports or amateur boxing in St. Louis quite
Okay.
frequently, and that's hands down my favorite one because I really get to yell. Like I really get to just all out yell in that microphone, which to me is just a whole lot of fun.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and I'm sure that is a very unique experience for me and the crowd as well. But
Mhm.
anyway, moving on, Jenny. So you
Yes.
have Coffee with Genny B. It's
Mhm.
not your only gig. What else do you do besides that today?
Okay. So I teach at the local university. I teach, it's a professional applied continuing education program. So the programs are 1 year or 2 years in length, and you don't get a degree per se, but you get a certificate. You get a certificate in marketing management or public
Right.
relations or human resources or what have you. And so I've been teaching for them. It's 5 years now. So I'm a contract teacher. And so that means that I work on sessions. So the class can be 6 weeks long, or if it's full time, or if it's half time, it's 12 weeks, and we do, you know, 12 mornings or 12 afternoons. And I teach effective oral communications. I teach PR fundamentals, fundraising and fund development, and event management.
Okay. Oh, that's a lot. That's a full plate.
It is
So,
totally.
and then you also have the podcast.
And I have the podcast.
All right. So the podcast by itself, if you're doing one show a week, that's a pretty significant investment. And I mean, I think people only see or hear the half hour to an hour show, right?
Hmm.
How many
Right.
other hours a week are you invested in the podcast?
Well, there's the recording, of course. There's booking the interviews, so it's making sure that I have recordings done. And sometimes, depending on if I have a few people booked, I can do a few during the week and get those in the bank, so to speak.
Right.
But I have to do show notes, and then there's the social media, and then there's creating the image for Instagram on Canva. So doing that, and yeah, so it's not just the recording. And it's
Yeah.
also going back, and even though it's being edited, I still have to play it back, make sure that they've caught everything, that, or they're not they haven't missed anything. And then the quote that I want for the Instagram image is, then I
Right.
have to listen to the episode and think, okay, which one do I want to use right now? And so there's a bit of work involved. Oh, and also, I post so I have a Winnipeg coffee community on Facebook. It's my own Facebook group. And so every time the episode comes out, I post on there. So that I've got Instagram and Facebook, and then show notes. And so,
Right.
yeah,
It's a
for
lot of work.
It's a lot of work for every episode.
It's not 1 hour. And I would say to pull off a 1 hour podcast with just audio, I think you're looking at a minimum of 5 hours. And
Mhm.
you could probably put it into 40 in reality if you really wanted to make the social media amazing and do like literally cross every T and every dot every I in the book.
Mhm.
One episode could easily be 40 hours of work. But there's a lot of shortcuts that you can take, and you don't have to. You don't have to have a TikTok, Instagram, Thriller, and a thousand other apps, right? You can really focus on the ones that you want to get into.
Mhm.
I can promise you, though, your niche is in all those platforms, right? So the more of them that you're in, the better. It's just a matter of you're there. You kind of got to be active. You have to be making content that's relevant for that platform, which
Absolutely. Yeah.
is
And you know
challenging.
what? It is, and it's a lot of work. And so I don't just do that, but it's also provide, like you say, relative content or relatable content. And it's about the brand. So it's always about the brand. And
Right.
so it's making sure that I'm posting what people want to look at, learn about, et cetera, et cetera. It's about optimization and making sure that, because right now, again, only 56 episodes. I don't have a lot of followers or subscribers. And so it's building that, but it's putting myself out there, and it's looking at doing other things as well, because not just podcast and not just, what I'm teaching at the university, but I'm looking at my Coffee with Genny B business in a sense, because I'm looking at creating a coffee pass for September. So, you talked about before we started the show that you and someone, 1995, I think you said that you had
Yeah.
gone, you did a coffee crawl or a coffee tour.
Yep.
So I want to do something like that, visiting all the different coffee shops in Winnipeg. And then I want to do coffee tours where I can concentrate on certain neighborhoods and get people. For a couple of hours, we're visiting 3 coffee shops in this area, and then you get a little bit of education, get to try the products. So,
Right.
and then last year, what I did for the first time is I did a coffee advent calendar.
Oh,
Yeah,
well,
so
that's
I got
cute.
I,
So is
it
that
is
a
like
different coffee
yep
bag in each?
in each for
Okay.
25 days, and I had 18 coffee roasters involved, and I sold out within 2 days.
Wonderful.
I know.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So you're
So
going to do more this year. You're going to
I'm doing more
quadruple
this
that
year.
order?
Yeah, I'll ship it to St. Louis. Okay. But yeah, so I'm also doing that, and I'm doing markets because I've got my branded coffee with a couple of coffee roasters here, and yeah, just putting putting the coffee word out there. I want to be
Right.
known as the coffee influencer, the person that people go to if they want to know about coffee.
Okay. So, and you have your own line of coffee now.
It's branded with a local coffee roaster, so they roast the coffee, but I have my label on it, and I'm selling the coffee. So Coffee with Genny B coffee, and it's the kind of coffee that I really enjoy, and it's just getting my name out there.
All right. That's super fun. So, multiple businesses within the podcast. And I think this is, there's a lot of people out there that want to start a podcast or YouTube channel or anything. I'm mentoring a young boy right now starting a YouTube channel. So
Okay.
there's all kinds of things out there, but you really have to start considering what other lines of revenue you can have
Hmm.
with your core set of content, right? Because you can make money just doing the podcast or just doing the YouTube, but that's not where you're going to make your lion's share of your money. It's going to be sponsorship deals, public speaking events,
Hmm.
and branded merchandise. Merchandising
Yep.
is what you're doing, which I think is super duper smart. And I love the advent calendar. I think that is super super cute. And my wife will probably be ordering this year for sure. She loves advent calendars and she loves coffee, so it feels like it's right up that alley. So
Oh, it's perfect.
that is
And I'm even upping the game for the advent calendar, because last year what I did is I had all the coffees ground, and then I personally put them into these little bags and then put them into the little holders. And I thought,
yep.
this is so much work. There's got to be a better way. And one of the coffee roasters, I was talking to her, and she said, because they seal their own bags. I said, what if I got the coffee to you, and all you need to do is grind it, put it in the bags and seal it. I'll look after the labeling and so on. And that's what she's going to do.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I don't have to sit there at the kitchen table and fill all these little bags. It's going to be done super quick. Slap the labels on, put the
There
box
you go.
together, and away you go.
So last year you did a proof of concept. You did a lot of manual labor, and this year you're outsourcing that because this year you have confidence that you'll sell at least what you sold last year.
Oh, double that.
Right. So you can go into the manufacturing and you got your margins down and you know how to turn that around. That's super exciting. That can be huge. Funny, I didn't even know what an advent calendar was until I met my wife. Until my wife moved in our first Christmas. She's like, "There's advent calendars." I'm like, "What is this?" She's like, "Advent calendars, silly." So
And it started with chocolates, and now you can get everything.
yeah, we still just do the chocolates.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm like, "Great, 25 pieces of chocolate. Let's eat them all today." But
Well, and you know what? And you said you're a tea lover. There's advent calendars for tea, so you can get a
wow,
different tea.
okay,
Yeah, every day. So something to look at. Look at anyway.
that is pretty interesting. If somebody wanted to start a podcast today,
Mhm.
what advice would you give them to get started?
That's a good question. Find out what is their theme? What do they want to talk about? What are they passionate about? What is something that is going to be authentic for them? When I tell my students about, when they present themselves, it's about your authentic voice. You want to talk about something you know. If you don't know anything about a particular topic, you can do some research on it, but it's not going to sound the same as you talking about something that is important to you. So for instance, I did an episode on coffee cups, and it was great, but it wasn't my best episode because I'm talking about these coffee cups versus now, if I was talking about the other day, I did an episode on making space, and it was something that was important to me. And that's something I'm just going to segue into something. Sometimes I come up with an idea and I sit there and it's like, okay, today I'm going to talk about this. And I go and to record it and I stop and start. And it's like, it just doesn't sound right. It's not coming out of me. It's not flowing out of me. And sometimes I think, okay, you know what? I have to get rid of that idea because obviously it's not working. And then it's almost like I have to wait for the right moment. It's like, you know what? I want to talk about that. And I'm going to sit in front of the microphone and it's all the words are going to come out from me because it's something that is meaningful to me. So my advice is if you want to start a podcast, first of all, get yourself a really good mic.
Yes.
That's really important. Make sure that you have the setup that works for you because I'm downstairs in my basement and I make sure that, if I'm recording, it's like, okay, my husband, okay, you can't move and make sure the dog's not barking and, all the rest of it. But what is your passion? What are you passionate about? Are you going to talk about cooking? Are you going to talk about baseball? Are you going to talk about hockey? Are you going to talk about horses? What are you going to talk about? And don't worry don't worry about your audience, what they're going to listen to or what they want to listen to, okay? Think about what you want to talk about. And then think about that one person. So it's always about, don't think about you're talking to 200 people. Think about creating that persona. Who is that one person that fits all the characteristics of the person that you want to talk to? Think about who would you go out for coffee with or a beer or, a hot dog or whatever it is. And what would you say to that person? And then put that in your podcast.
Right. I think that is really, really great advice, not just for podcasting, which is great as well, but for marketing strategy as well. I see this all the time. People try to cater to everybody.
Yeah.
And they end up catering to nobody because they're just really, really vanilla. Nobody knows what they're talking about. Like Clicks and Bricks, we talk to founders of companies. Period. That's
Right.
what we do, right? Took us a while to find that. I just like talking about business. So I'm like, hey, let's have people in business on. And then it took, probably, I don't know, 100 episodes before like, hey, let's really just narrow in on the founders of the companies and how they started and what kind of hurdles they had. And I like that a lot. And I think it's the opposite of when you're running a business and you have a product and service, you have to cater to every customer that calls in, right? Your customer service at that point. But this is not a customer service game. This is an entertainment game.
Yes.
Your audience will find you. If you're being authentic and you're just being real and you're talking about stuff that you love to do and you're doing that consistently and you're putting it out there, it's okay that your first 50, 100 are 0 views or 2 views. It's okay. Keep going. You just haven't found your right flow yet, right? Or whatever it is. I don't know what it is. I absolutely am a firm believer in be authentic, which you absolutely said. Talk about what you love, and the third thing is you just got to keep doing it. You got to keep putting yourself out there. And if you don't, you'll never get to the next level. And
Right.
you got to
You got to
keep
be
doing it.
consistent. Yeah, absolutely. And it's not about the downloads. I remember I was with this other company, and we were on Podbean, I think it was, and I got my first my first 1,000 downloads, and I was so excited. It's like, yay, I got 1,000 downloads. And then when I switched to this new podcast company, and I was talking about downloads, and he said, "Yeah, that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. It's not the downloads. It's people paying attention to you and listening, and not necessarily downloads, but there's more to it. And so if you're hung up about the downloads, then that doesn't matter. What you need to do, and as you say, you have to be consistent and get your voice and get your message out there. And you have to make sure that you believe it yourself.
Yes, absolutely. More than anybody else, right? Because if you don't believe it, you're not going to get the downloads. And I disagree. I think the downloads are important, right? It's one of your KPIs, key performance
One of them,
indicators. It's just one, though. It's not all of them. If you don't have the downloads, nobody's finding you. That's a different problem. But if they're finding you, and if you're getting a whole bunch of downloads, but nobody's listening or nobody's connecting, then it really doesn't matter, right? I've been in the internet long enough. I know how to get hundreds of thousands of downloads in a couple of hours if I needed to.
Right.
But it's more about consistency and being authentic and putting out good quality content that creates some kind of value. Knowing your value is also a pretty big one, right? I like conversational, kind of educational, and you're more probably entertainment educational.
Entertainment, educational. I would say it again. We're at a coffee shop having a conversation. You're having tea, I'm having coffee. We're having a conversation about.
So your passive listening would be and I think a lot of what I do is passive listening. I'm in the car, don't want to listen to any music, and I just want to hear a conversation of something that's going on in somebody's business, right? And I like that. I listen to conversational stuff, talk radio, and a lot of people do. So it's
when I get a comment from someone saying, "Oh, I was listening to your episode, number whatever, while I was cooking dinner, and so it was in the background, and so that makes me happy because you were cooking dinner and you're listening to my podcast, and it's putting you in a good mood about, cooking dinner and feeding your family, kind of thing."
Yes. My favorite is, hey, I heard this show and it inspired me to keep going, or I watched this and it inspired me to start something. Those are screw the downloads, all that stuff can go to this wayside. Those kinds of moments, if it feels right, if you get goosebumps when you tell people what you do, you're in the right spot. Just keep going. Just keep doing that, and everything else will figure itself out. Right?
Absolutely.
I'm very, very firm believer in that.
I do, and I'm too. So,
okay. So you are teaching, started the podcast, keep doing that stuff, got your own line. So you're selling nonstop, doing the show. If somebody wanted to hear the show, how would they get in contact with you? Where would they find it at?
I'm on all the platforms. So Spotify, Apple, Google, Stitcher, I don't know how.
Genny with
Coffee,
a G, correct?
Genny with a G. So coffeewithgennyb.ca. So if people want to go to my website, so I have a list of all my podcast episodes. Okay. I'm working on doing some blogs. So my blogs will be up there as well. Items for sale, and just learning more about who I am and what I'm all about. So
Wonderful. And we'll throw all those links down here at the bottom of the thing.
Great.
You had said you bought a Blue Yeti. I don't think that's a Blue Yeti in front of you today, is it?
It is.
It is. Okay. So it's the same mic.
Yeah, it's the same mic. Yep, it's the same mic. Instead of, I used to have it on just a little stand sitting on my desk, but I've got this nice little contraption with the arms so that I just find that because I'm sitting so it's close to my mouth, so it's same level, and I find that because you had to play around with the sound levels as well. I had no idea what gain was. I'm like, one of the producers like, okay, you have to increase your gain. Okay, what does that mean? I have no idea.
Right.
So I had to look it up. It's like, oh, okay, that's what that means. And
Yes.
it's learning as you go along because there's still so much that I don't know about podcasting, and I'm learning every single day. And every single day, I know that I'm learning something new and I'm getting better. I'm paying attention to some of the things that I'm doing, and I just want to make sure that I'm giving quality, that people are listening to me and they're getting quality, they're getting something out of it. They're, even if I told the story about the woman who wrote in and said about the, conscious parenting. If I'm teaching one person, even just one person, it doesn't matter anybody else, if one person I've made a difference to, that's enough for me.
Right. And you don't know, in reality, if you can touch one person, how many other people they will touch in their life because of that positive experience. And it is a ripple effect. And I think we need more of it, more and more and more, just nonstop. What do you say to the person? There's a lot of podcasts out there today. Ton, right? Now, real fact of the matter is that most podcasts they get 3 to 5 episodes in, and there's no more episodes ever made, right? Because they burn out really, really fast. What do you tell the person today that has the idea, they want to get started, and they just don't think that they'll be, that the juice is worth the squeeze? That they're like, man, I'll put a whole lot of effort in, and I'll never be successful with my podcast.
That's their first mistake, is that they're thinking about how they're going to be successful.
Okay.
Because I've been in fitness, so that's another of my little side gigs. And I remember when I was going for my a group fitness certification, the first thing the instructor said to us, if you're in it for the money, get out. Because if you're teaching fitness, if you're teaching, whatever it is, and you're thinking about your paycheck, you're thinking about, and money's great and we need money. But if your first thing is like, okay, I'm going into this class and I'm teaching and I've got, 20 women who want to lose weight and I'm helping them achieve that, but I'm just thinking in my head dollar signs that, they're paying me X number of dollars to do this. Where's my focus? If the focus is on how much money I'm making versus my focus is on how I can help them, then they're not getting the best part of me. And so I'm not showing up as my authentic self to them. And they don't know that, but eventually they'll find out. And then they'll say, I'm just not feeling it today. I think I'm going to skip and then they just disappear, right? And then they're gone. So with the podcast, it's not about being successful and I'm going to have thousands of downloads and thousands of followers. It's, what is the message that you want to share with the world? What do you have to say? What do you have to say? And how are you going to say it? And why? I think about Simon Sinek, start with why. What is your why? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Okay, for me, my why is I love coffee. And I want to talk about coffee, and I want to talk about having conversations over coffee. And I want to talk about the people that I'm interested in and the people that I think that others might be interested in learning more about their stories.
Right.
Awesome.
And so that first step is they have to define what success is to them.
Exactly.
And if it's the money, probably shouldn't do it for just the money. It has to be something you really love doing.
Yep.
Because if it's not something you really love doing, you're going to quit. I promise you. Because you're gonna make 5 episodes. you're going to put 100 hours. Those first 5 are really hard,
Mhm.
right? Because you got to get the microphone, you got to learn, you got to do all this stuff. And those first 5 episodes are a big undertaking, and
Mhm.
nobody's going to watch them
And,
or,
and you know
or
what?
listen to them, right?
No,
Maybe some friends and family, a couple hundred people, maybe if you're lucky.
right. And what people don't realize is that before I even record my first episode, I had to come up with a list of put together 40 ideas for episodes. Okay, so I've got my 40 ideas. Then I have to find the music for my podcast. Then there's creating the intro and the outro, and then recording, getting that recorded. And then it's, oh, I have to go to a photo shoot now because I need cover art for my podcast. And so it's all of these steps before I even record my first episode. And then I've got the first episode.
Right.
And as you say, then the first 5, and then after that, it's like, okay, you know what? I think I'm doing okay. So yeah, if you're not committed, if you're not passionate about what you're doing, and if you don't believe that you can do it, it's like anything. It's not just podcasting.
Right.
It's about being an athlete. It's about
Any business.
any business. Where's your endurance? What's the end game? Why are you, again, back to why? Why are you doing this? Why is this important to you? And this is the first time so I'm 62. This is the first time in my life that I am doing something just for me. This podcast is just for me. I'm sharing myself with the world, and it's important to me. And if my husband said to me, you know what, you have to give up your podcast, it's either him or me, or it's either the podcast or me, it's like, okay, bye-bye.
Wow. That's some conviction. And I'm sorry that it took this long before you did something just for you, but congratulations.
Thanks.
That's really, really special. And that's a whole lot of fun. And that's probably why you're attracting the guests that you're getting, and continue moving on and be patient and keep chugging, because it's a whole lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. I went to Podcast Fest last month, I think. A month and a half, 2 months, a couple months ago. I found it very interesting, the amount of introverts that do podcasts. The people that talking in public to other people, really, they struggle talking with other people, but they're fine talking in front of the camera and or into a microphone about topics that they really, really love. And I found that so interesting that the state of our current media world allows people that otherwise wouldn't necessarily be in this world to have a voice. And some of the stuff they're coming up with is just really, really cool stuff, right? I met a guy that does a podcast. I don't recall the name of it, but he teaches leadership skills through episodes of Star Trek.
No
Like,
way.
Brilliant, right? So he watches a show, an old school Star Trek, and he goes through like, oh, this is the leadership skills that they executed here, and this is how they did this here. And I listened to a couple of shows, and I'm like, man, this is brilliant. This is really, really, really fun stuff, right? And without podcasting, I don't know, where that skill would come into play at, other than this really cool little world that we have that we're living in today.
Absolutely. And you know what? I want to touch on something too, because you mentioned how I don't even know how many millions of podcasts are out there. And I don't know how many are out there about coffee. And I remember when I first started, I guess I was about 4 months into it, and there were other people coming out with doing things on coffee. And I literally had a panic attack. It's like, oh my God, there's all these people doing coffee. It's like,
Right.
How
do I stand out?
How do I stand out? Because there's this one guy who talks about his thing on Instagram. He doesn't have a podcast, but his thing on Instagram is that he talks about the different coffees, and he talks about the brewing methods and all these filters, and it's all about the equipment and about the process of making coffee. And he's got like, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of followers. And I was like, how can I compete with that? And I remember I was talking to somebody, and it's like, I don't know if I should continue. And she said, stay in your lane. Stay in your lane. You're not doing what he's doing. He's found an audience that love what he's doing.
Right.
You're about relationships. You're about connections. You're about community. You're about relationships. And that's what you need to focus on. Right. And you need to stay and be authentic in that, because that will attract people to you because that is what you believe in.
So very true. Absolutely. You cannot be in a scarcity mindset, right? The world is an abundant place. The universe has a lot of people on this planet. A lot of people. Yes, there's a lot of podcasts. Not a lot of them have a lot of episodes. So you can really just dig in and keep going. You have the tenacity to keep putting out content. Your audience will find you. Your tribe will find you. But they won't unless you put it out there, right?
Yep.
The same with business. If you have a product or service that you're trying to sell to people, you can't just put it on the shelf and think that it's going to sell. But you have to get out there every single day, and you got to put in the work, right? It's just that simple. And if you do that, if you love what you do, then it should be more rewarding than if you don't love what you're doing. And I can't imagine that lifestyle.
No, I can't either.
Going back to all of them, though, I would argue and say, you said don't do it for the money. If you're in fitness, don't do it for the money. I own a gym. There is money to be made in the fitness world, right? You can do it. You can't do it if you're doing what everybody else is doing, right? So if you're doing 6-week transformation challenges, you're going to have a hard time today, right? Because, everybody in the country is being littered with those, right? So you got to do something a little bit different. I think the same thing holds true for podcasting and YouTube channels and business services or consumer services.
Yeah.
I can't think of the guy's name, but I know he has vidIQ. He said, and it's one of my favorite quotes, is that different is better than better. You don't have to be better than the other guy. You just have to be different than the other guy. You have to be different in your own unique way. And that will hold true in so many, it will get you so much further than trying to be better than your competition.
Oh, I love that. Different is better than better. Right. Because I'm not better or worse than anybody else. I'm just different. My focus is on, and if somebody wanted to copy me and wanted to say, hey, that's a really great idea, I think I want to do that too, it wouldn't be the same.
No.
Because I have my own personality, I have my own way of doing things, and because it comes across as authentic, and because I truly believe in what I'm doing and I want to share myself, it's different than what somebody else wants to do.
Right. And in a world, we're late stage capitalism, right? We've been running this system for almost a little over 200 years now.
Yep.
All the services are done. All the products are being outsourced. The last thing we have is brand and entertainment or content to create for each other. And I'm sure we all, if you take a 40-minute drive, you're going to hear the same song on that station probably 4 or 5 times. And we all sit and scroll through Netflix and Hulu and all that stuff and say, well, I've seen all this stuff that I like to watch. There's nothing left. So we're literally in a world where we have unlimited amounts of content to watch, but we've consumed all the kind of stuff that we want. So it's important that we keep creating new content for the world, right?
Yes.
The world needs more content to have. If they're going to continue to stream the way we're streaming, there's more need for content than the content exists. So if that's the hang up for somebody wanting to start a show, don't let that be the stopper, right? There's plenty of people out there that need or want to listen to something different, unique, with a different style than what they're used to seeing.
Yes. And it shouldn't stop someone from wanting to do it. And I just want to go back to what you were saying about money. I agree that in fitness, I certainly don't want to lose money. And so, but if my sole purpose of doing the podcast or going into whatever business is, if my sole purpose is, I'm going to do this because I'm going to make money, I'm going to get rich.
Right.
Okay, that's great. That's wonderful that you want to get rich and make money. And of course, we don't want to do it for free. But is what you're doing to get rich going to make you rich?
Right.
Or is what I'm doing is I'm going to be the best at whatever it is I'm doing, have the best product, service, company, whatever it is. I'm going to have the best, and I'm going to make sure that people have that quality so they associate with me with quality, with service, et cetera, and then the money will come.
Absolutely.
Yep.
It's so important. People can smell it when you're not being authentic, when you've got a hidden agenda. Like it is just so obvious to the world when those things are at play. And I know that it probably seems like those guys are always winning, but I think most of their posts are fake at
I
the end
think
of the
so.
day. Right. So, just be you, have a good time, do the things that you like doing, try to do them at a huge scale.
Mhm.
And there is money to be had in both games, the podcasting and the fitness world. Consistency is going to be the biggest. And I think you're rarely right. If you focus on being great at what you're doing, right,
Mhm.
then everything else will start to fall into place,
Yep.
right? And it just does. And trust in that, if nothing else,
Yeah,
and
trust in the
keep moving
process.
forward. Yes,
Trust in the
wonderful.
process, absolutely. And and my husband always says, because tend to work harder than I need to, because sometimes I don't know any better. And so
Right.
he's always saying to me, work smarter, not harder. There's got to be a
Yeah.
better way of doing what it is you're doing.
I like
And
the struggle, unfortunately. So subconsciously, I always put myself under the bus that I had to crawl out of. But I'm learning. I'm trying to stop doing that. But it is real. What do you
it is,
think about? And we'll wrap up here soon. What do you think
yeah.
about whenever you go on this journey? If you're going to start a podcast or a show or entertainment, or something where you really have to put yourself out there,
Hmm.
how much mindset work do you think a person needs to do when they're going into this journey?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would say the mindset needs to be there. Because I think that if you think you're going to succeed, you will. But if you think you're going to fail, you will.
Right.
And so the mindset has to be there. The mindset. So, first of all, I want to do a podcast because I have this great idea to talk about decorations. I love decorations, so I want to talk about decorations. And I've had a passion for it, and my house is full of decorations, and I've got all these really great ideas. And so that's my thing. That's what I want to talk about. And so my brain is full of ideas, and I'm thinking and I'm writing things down, and I'm so excited about sharing it. And then I share these ideas with my family and my friends, and they're like, I don't know, that's not really a great idea. Like, how many podcasts are out there, and who cares about decorations? So why would you put yourself out there, right? Why are you doing this?
Right.
And you're right. Oh, you're right. I mean, what a dumb idea. What was I thinking? Okay, forget it. I'm not going to do it. And then it bugs you and bugs you and bugs you and
Right.
bugs you. And it's like, but so the reason I mentioned about the bugging is that when something is sticking with you, and it's like it's always there with you, and it's like it's like somebody grabbed your arm and they're holding on and they won't let go, and it's this idea, and you just know that if you don't do something with it's going to drive you crazy. And so then one day you get up the courage, and it's like, you know what, I'm going to do it because it's driving me crazy, and I got to do it. So that's one way of looking at it. The other is saying, you know what? Thanks for your feedback. I appreciate it, but I'm going to go ahead and do this because this is something that I want to do, and I put a lot of thought and research and effort into it, and this is what I'm going to do. And sometimes you just do it and don't tell anybody that you're doing it until you're doing it. Because I didn't
Right.
tell my husband I was doing it. I didn't tell him I was doing it until I started it. And then it's like, well, yeah, I'm doing that. And then it's so funny because some of his friends will be listening to my episodes, and it's like, yeah. And then they'll tell him, and he'll come home and he'll say, oh, yeah, they love your blog. It's like, oh, yeah, thanks, honey.
Yeah. It's okay.
But mindset, again, if it's a passion, it's burning. It's like, for me, even though I bought my mic and I'm going to do this, I just knew at 2021, if I didn't do it now, I probably would never do it.
Right.
And I just thought, you know what, I'm just all in. And that's what I said when the podcast company, when they said, okay, for us to do everything, it's going to be X number of dollars. I mean, I take forever to find a purse. I shop around for a purse, and I have to, and I'm comparing prices and everything. It's a purse, right?
Right.
And this is like big ticket money, and it's like, I'm in. I didn't even hesitate. I was like, yeah, I'm in. I'm in. Let's
Right.
do it. And I'll figure out how to pay for it, but let's do it.
Absolutely.
And
I think that mindset to me is huge, and I've had to do a ton of mindset work uh, for this show and just in life, and it's helped me I can't even tell you the amount of benefits that it's brought to my life, hypnosis and therapy and all of those things, meditation on a regular basis.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, you're always going to have the voice in your head that's saying, hey, we've got this, we can succeed. And you're always going to have that voice in your head that's saying, dude, you're going to burn. You're going to crash so hard. Like, you stupid idiot. What are you doing out there? And you have to, your success voice has to tell that failure voice, no, you're not. Shut up. We know what we're doing. We've got it. Leave us alone.
Yeah.
If it can't tell your own voice to shut up and leave you alone, it can't tell your friends and family and your naysayers that just aren't. I have no idea why friends and family don't support other creators. Like I've heard this story before. You're like, why are you doing that? That's silly. You're not gonna make it. You're never gonna get there. You hear all those stories, and I don't know why friends and family aren't more supportive than they are, especially when you come to something like what we're doing.
Hmm.
But if you can't tell your own voice to shut up and leave you alone, that you're moving forward, you won't be able to tell the other voices either. And
Right.
you'll quit at the slightest bit of adversity. You're like, oh, they're right. Shucks. I'm going to quit now and go off and do this other thing. So
Yep.
mindset has to be there. I don't know that I could do this show without daily meditation, without having a therapist on staff and all those other things, because you got to just put yourself out there every day and over. But has it helped your relationship with your husband at all?
Oh yeah, it has, because I share with him some stories. Like if I'm interviewing somebody, I'll talk about what we interviewed about and who's talking about it. And I think for him, and it's kind of cute because the messages that he gets from his friends and family about my podcast, it's almost like a reflection on him,
Right.
that his wife is doing something really great. He doesn't fully understand what it is. And I don't think he necessarily needs to, because not a lot of people understand. It's like, oh, what's a podcast? What are you doing?
Right.
But the fact that he hears what people are saying and it's all good stuff, and that makes him feel proud of what I'm doing.
Right.
That it makes me happy, that this is my happy place. I was doing a Zoom call with somebody, and there was a bunch of us who were talking about all the different things we're doing. And I was talking about some of the episodes that I was doing, and somebody said to me, when you talk about this, your face lights up. You are in your you are in your zone of genius, where time literally stands still, because you are caught up in the moment and you are doing something that you absolutely love, and you could not imagine being anywhere else in the world except here right now doing what you love.
So important.
Yep.
Yes. I have a few topics that are like that. Tech like lights me up. Talking about technology, artificial intelligence, aliens, all those things I get really, really excited about. And but we won't go off on those tangents. Genny, so we've got your link to your website. We'll put that up there. We'll put all your links everywhere so that people can listen to the podcast. What kind of, are you looking for guests, or do you have that all the way? You have your process down for guests, or if you are looking for guests, what kind of guests are you looking for?
I'm always open for guests. I'm open to anybody and anyone that has an interesting story to tell, and it could be, as I say, anybody from any walk of life. I mean, it doesn't, if they have a really cool idea for coffee, I always love to talk about coffee, but it's anyone. I look for the different stories, like
Right.
one day I'll be interviewing somebody who's running for mayor, and then next time I'm interviewing somebody who is a yoga instructor, so there's no rhyme or reason. It's just someone that I find fascinating, and sometimes I'll run into people and it's like, you know what? You're really interesting, and I'd love to hear your story. So I'm interested in hearing the story. I know others will want to hear it too.
Wonderful. And if they're interested on being on your show, they would just fill out a form on your website,
Yeah, they can get in touch with me,
and that'll start the process.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Genny, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it. Is there anything you'd like to leave the audience with before we go?
Just that find something that lights you up. Don't wait to do it. Life's too short, and if you don't do it now, you might never do it. And so find something that makes you happy. Find that thing that is yours, and go after it.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. Thank you for your time today, Genny. You have a great day.
Thanks so much, Ken.
That's it for today's show, folks. If you'd like to join my text line community, the number is 314-370-2871. All you have to do to join that text line is send me any question about business or technology. I'll do all the research, and I'll give you an absolutely free, totally unbiased answer. Get to work.